Welcome to the 7th edition of the LBS Conversation Series. The past webinars in the series have touched on leadership, economics, finance, human resource management, and a host of other topics important in these troubled times. Ours is no less critical, as this afternoon we'll be discussing the responsibilities to shareholders. I forgot to switch on my video. Okay, great. Now you can see me. So we'll be discussing the responsibilities to shareholders over this period of the pandemic and beyond. And we have chosen to focus on 3 stakeholders: employees, customers, and the society. Hence the title of this webinar, which we titled COVID-19, My Workforce, My Customers, My World, What to Do. This webinar will hold as 2 segments, one focusing on employees, moderated by me, and the other looking at customers and the society, moderated by Dr. Adun Okupe. Now, I will very briefly introduce the panelists and proceed to invite them to speak to us. While they speak, you can send in your comments or questions via the Q&A section of the webinar screen. You can indicate which panelist your question is addressed to if you have a preference. You can also upvote a question that somebody else has asked if it's the same one you want to ask. That will give it more chances of being selected for a live response. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can, but obviously we won't be able to answer all of them since there's so many people here. So we'll answer a few questions after each discussion segment so that we can end the seminar by 2:35 p.m. Other questions will be answered offline. We'll send you emails after the webinar using your registration details. So for the first segment, our panelists are Austin Onuoha, trainer on conflict resolution, corporate social responsibility, human rights, non-violence and peace building and development. He is also adjunct faculty at the West African Peace Building Institute in Ghana and the National Peace Academy in Nigeria. Austin. Austin is muted.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me now? Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Then we have Dr. Adun Okupe, Senior Advisor at Red Clay, a tourism advisory practice, and a member of faculty at Lagos Business School. She teaches strategy and sustainability.
Good afternoon, everyone.
We have Gbadunade Ogunleye, the Managing Director of James Kibit Facility Managers and an alumna of the Owner Manager Program, OMP, of Lagos Business School.
Good afternoon, everyone.
We also have Soromidayo George, Director, Corporate Affairs and Sustainable Business for Unilever, Ghana and Nigeria, and also co-founder of the Corporate Social Responsibility and Governance Institute.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
For the second segment, our panelists are Chidinma Maduka, Head Human Resources and Shared Services at Falcon Corporation Limited. She is also an LBS alumna. Chidinma, you're muted. Okay. We also have Dr. Edwin Agwu, Associate Professor of Strategic Management. Okay. Dr. Edwin Agwu, Associate Professor of Strategic Management at Lagos Business School.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar.
And then we have Dr. Chidinma Maduka. She manages the LBS Sustainability Center at Lagos Business School and teaches courses in strategy, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and social entrepreneurship.
Good everyone.
My name is Kemi Ogunyemi, Associate Professor at LBS. I teach business ethics, anthropology, self-leadership, and sustainability. I welcome you all, our distinguished panelists, and our kind audience. Once again, I welcome you on behalf of Lagos Business School. In this first segment that focuses on employees, we're touching upon complex dilemmas, people issues, ranging from fair pay to difficult layoff decisions, to health and safety at work, to work-life balance, as both work from home and return to work are battling with supervision requirements for children who are schooling in online mode. My first question goes to Austin. Austin, please help us to understand how exactly the pandemic has affected businesses with regard to their employees.
Yeah, Kemi, thank you very much. Good afternoon once more. two things are happening simultaneously. One is that the COVID-19 environment is a very uncertain one because none of us were prepared for it. Second is the anxiety that is accompanying it. And then the third thing I want to touch briefly as well is, what I call the instability around the policy and decision-making environment. Let me start with one that has been of major concern to some of us in the field, and that is the definition of essential service. Once this breakout happened, some businesses were designated essential services, and that means they are free, even with the lockdown, to move about. But the danger is, let me give you an example. I know of a contracting firm is doing some work for a state government up north, and they are building a specialist hospital. So immediately the lockdown happened, what they did was to ask the staff to move on site so that they can stay there and be doing the work. Now, if you look at that, the cement supplier, those who will supply the road, do they belong to the category of essential service? That's one. Now, second is, if you look at the staff, this is not an environment they are used to. Some of them do shift, some come in the morning and go in the evening. Now they're all going to be in one place. And remember, we're talking about social distancing. And the people who are going to supply them food do also belong to that category. We are a federation. And one other thing we notice in a federation is you have subnational governments. Now the federal government locked down Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State. Now the state governments are doing their own thing. Now, if you are a company that has branches all over, will you be respecting that of the federal government at FCT or in Lagos, Ogun State, or you'll be doing what the states are doing? These are very volatile situations. And then if you are a business, yesterday or the other, but I was listening to the Director General of Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and he talked about a restaurant, how you can regulate people coming in, the number of people. Here is a business environment where you don't even have enough customers in normal times. And now people have to come in, you have to say, please, can you wait outside? And then you come in, we can only take 10 people, you wait. People don't do that. When you go out for lunch, you're either on break or you're on business or you're hungry, you want to eat. So the environment is one that is changing. And bear in mind, before COVID-19 pandemic, businesses were already suffering in Nigeria. We have very poor infrastructure. Now, if you move goods from one point to the other, you can't be sure how many hours or how many days it's going to take. The railway system is not what it should be. We have insecurity, which has escalated with what is going on now. Rotary Club, for instance, in Abuja the other day at Life Camp, went to distribute palliatives. They're not a government agency. They were mobbed. In Kano, I saw a vehicle carrying water. It was mobbed. Another was carrying bread. So insecurity escalated. And in this instance, you as a business manager is supposed to make decisions. Now, maybe finally, every other price of good or service is spiking except labor. Labor is taking the hit, for instance. People can make any other decision. But we forget that labor is the consumer and customer we're talking about. And these are the people that produce. So if you are a business, before COVID-19, you have full inventory in your warehouse, you need to offload them. Those people who don't have disposable income anymore, or their income has been lowered, are supposed to buy. Then if you don't have, and you are manufacturing like sanitizers, face masks, you will still expect the same people to buy. Where is the money come from? Many of them are losing their jobs. Some are taking salary or pay cuts. So these are some of the environment we're operating in. And what we are used to in the business environment, erratic power supply, internet fluctuation, corruption on the highway, multiple taxation, these are all realities of our business environment. And then this COVID-19 pandemic is complicating that situation the more. So this is a kind of time that taxes people's mind. And it's a time that people really need to sit up and see what is going on. And this kind of policy environment is very, very difficult for us to be able to manage. And so one of the things we must bear in mind is you don't have control of what is going on. So managers have to be abreast of what is happening and see what they can do. This is the time to think on your feet because you don't know what will happen in the next minute. Some, people were saying, look, they've opened some, say it's partial lockdown. I spoke to somebody who was with the federal agency last night, and he said, look, they're opening on Monday, but they have been asked not to come to the office because, they have to disinfect the place. So I stop here for now, and that's the complicity we are facing.
Thank you so much, Austin, for setting the scene so clearly. These are indeed difficult times with multiple and varied challenges for employers of labor of all kinds. And against this background showing that it's a troubled time, Adun, in what ways can organizations manage employees responsibly?
Thank you, Kemi, and good afternoon once again, everybody. I think right now it's important to see that, yes, we're saying it's uncertain times, and businesses are having to think that this is not the first time we've had to deal with uncertainty. We've had a global financial crisis, the credit crunch, the stock market falling. But this is different because this is a matter of health, it's a matter of well-being, and to some, it's a matter of life and death. And so the challenges are a lot more personal, and I think they're a lot more uncertain. And so for organizations, so businesses and also public organizations, it is important that we try as much as possible to show certainty and to try and focus on employee well-being, which is the physical, the emotional, the financial, but also the social. And I know that it's very difficult now as an employer yourself, you are also uncertain and you're not quite sure how do you then communicate certainty. But right now it's very clear that communication is the most important thing that employers need to do to their team. And one way to start is to really go back to your purpose and your values. What did you try to achieve? Why did you set up your business? And then try and see how you can realign all that is going on now with those purposes and those values. And then also to organizations that have come up with some sort of business continuity plan, it is time to also share this with your employees. Tell them that, share your fears, share that you do not know it all, but also share with them how you're trying to ensure that things continue to be the same or as best stable as possible. And what do I mean by this stability that you're trying to communicate? So for example, their jobs, people need to know that are their jobs going to be safe? And even if you do not know whether their jobs are going to be safe or not, you need to let them know that, okay, I don't know, but for the next 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, we have covered your salaries. And this is something that we're really seeing in the tourism industry, which, as you can imagine, was the worst hit in this crisis. It's about ensuring that teams, hotels, restaurants, attractions can communicate to their staff that right now things are there, but what we can do is either adjust your work contract, so you either have a flexible work contract or ask employees to take some time off work, so maybe work 70% of the time, or even use the time, they have to deal with their children at home as well. So sometimes they might not even want to work full time. So it's good to have these conversations with them and communicate with them so that you know and they know where you're coming from. But I think the most important thing is that organizations really must show a strong moral compass. You must also try and see that for those that can work from home, are you ensuring that, this is Nigeria, are you ensuring that you have data provided for them? Are you ensuring that you've also covered some of their fuel needs if they have to use generator? Or like some of members of my team, they have chosen from their own initiative to work in the evenings when internet is better and also when there's more guaranteed power supply. So these are things that we can also communicate with our employees and welcome their ideas. Now, it's going to be difficult because some painful decisions will have to be made, but try as much as possible to see if you can retain your staff or redeploy them. So if you are not able to keep them in their jobs as usual, is there any other part of your organization that they can work in? And I think why is this important? It's because, this is Nigeria. We don't have the usual social safety nets that other environments have. And so it's important that we have to bear these additional considerations and know that what we do or do not do at this time will signal something for now, but also for a long time in the future. And I think just finally, it's also time that you can use with your employees to identify and praise skills of determination, collaboration, ability to innovate, come up with ideas, new ideas, encourage these new ideas and praise them, because you never know that your employees might have ideas that they have seen from being on the field, that you might not even be aware of, and they might come up with ideas that you can use to change your business model for this time. And just a very short example is that one of the restaurants that I work with was just sharing with me how they've had to really think carefully about their business model now, because as Austin mentioned, people are not coming out to eat. And so it's also seen from their employees saying that, okay, you know what, we can stay in the restaurant, we can do 3 or 4 of us can stay and work from the restaurant. And then we can now say how we can do home delivery services. They never used to do home delivery services before, but he didn't think of that. It was his employees that said, you know what, we can do this and we're committed to doing this with you, and we'll leave our families and come because we want to ensure that the business survives. So let's also not think that our employees are not human beings. They are our greatest assets, and they are also aware of what's going on. And let's encourage them to also contribute to how we can ensure that businesses can at least survive in this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adun. So Adun has helped us to underline the fact that employees are stakeholders who have invested their lives, their talents, and their future in the organization. And as such, we need to work together with them to get a win-win solution to the challenges that face us in this period. Now I'm going to ask Gbadunade, in your experience, what do employees concretely expect from their organizations now? And what could happen if those expectations are not properly handled by managers?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kemi. Hello, everyone again. Due to the uncertainties suddenly surrounded by the employees, the expectation from their employers is now quite high. So what happens now is that the employees are expecting more from their employers, and there are 2 main areas which we've looked at, and the first one I'll be starting with is the area of support. The employees' expectations of the employees are quite high now, and this is mainly due to the fact that there is no government welfare system in Nigeria. Closest to this is the relative system support, which is also now impacted with the COVID-19. So the relatives too can't support the employers. So the employees are stuck. They're looking onto their employers for support. We at James Cubic, for example, have been able to, we've engaged our employees in a dialogue. And this is to enable us identify specific needs for support at this time for the employees. And we found safety at work to be very important to them. The frontline staff are concerned about their safety, especially now that the lockdown is being phased out. So what we did was we ensured systems to implement the safety at work were immediately kind of implemented and circulated. Then we also provided PPEs, personal protective equipment. Policies were put up and circulated. No mask, no entry wedge, facility management company. So no mask, nose mask, no entry, no mask, no movement. We also looked at transportation, which was a huge challenge during the lockdown. The transportation, we mobilized transport for our frontline staff. We also provided food, we provided beddings, cooking utensils to make them as comfortable and functional as possible at their various sites, reducing the need to commute. So that was what we did for them. The other main area that we'll be looking at, that we looked at actually as for the expectations from the employees, is flexibility. And this actually applied more to those who have had to start working from home. And employers are expected to be more considerate at this time, less rigid in their expectations from expectations of employees' performance. I'll give you an example of a staff who is trying to have a meeting, a Zoom meeting. I mean, that's what's been happening now, Zoom meetings. I personally experienced that while I was trying to have a serious meeting with a lead officer. And I mean, some of them don't have too much space in the house. They have children at home, they're not in school. So I could see him in the video trying to wave the child and trying to concentrate on the meeting. So I had to, suggest to him Do you want to settle the child and let's reschedule the meeting? So these are things that employers are expected to be considerate about. I strongly, the question Kemi asked again was, if these expectations are not very well managed, what happens? The first is loss of confidence and trust in the organization. Low morale, which will make your employees susceptible to sickness and even to the virus. God forbid, we don't want that to happen. You know, they have no enthusiasm for work, making them unreliable, low productivity, and of course you lose good hands. And for an SME, which we are, James Cubic Facility Managers, we're an SME, you don't want to lose your work capacity. Your workforce is your capacity. You lose your workforce, you lose your capacity to continue to exist. So that's really why these two areas we saw that we as employers needed to consider. For the expectations of the employees were quite high in these areas, and James Cubic Facility Managers in these areas, we supported them in these areas, and so because we don't want to lose our capacity to work. They are the ones that will make you look good during COVID-19, during the lockdown, and even afterwards. So those were the points I would be sharing at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Badun. I think people will agree with me that yours is a great example of ethical and responsible, as well as humanistic leadership. The examples you shared with us, we've all picked one or two things from there that we could do. Now I'm going to ask Dayo. Dayo, would you advise on how employers can manage return to work while managing the personnel costs right now? Because obviously we're now in a phase where everybody's trying to see, how do we get back to work or not get back to work? What's going on? We're phasing out the lockdown. Also, people are afraid that they may lose talented staff that you need to sustain the business into the future. Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, thank you, Kemi. I think this is the big elephant in the room. The reality is that all businesses have been impacted, and maybe very few have really benefited from the challenges that we find ourselves in with COVID-19. Probably those are the ones that were nimble and quite flexible enough to adapt to the situation and be able to tap into the, essential goods and services requirements at this point in time. So the conversation around personnel costs is something that has to be on the table. And the first thing to say is that one must not be shy away from then understanding how this will be impacted in light of business continuity. Because if business is going to continue short term or even medium term, that has to be on the table. So some of the things that we usually advise is that, because one of the things that have been really spoken about is the issue of restructuring. So some of the things that we usually advise is, look, the issue of restructuring should be the last thing on the table. That should be the last thing that you should be talking about. You need to look at different strategies and look at how you're going to work your efficiencies and also address the issue of waste within the business to be able to shave off those costs that are not necessary. So some things that employers need to look at if they have to touch personnel cost at all is to look at, the issue of salary increment at this time. This is a time not to increase salaries. This is not the time to start promoting people. Could there be an option of wage freeze, for instance? I know of someone who said his wife's contract was not renewed. Do we then stall contract renewals at this time and probably then put a stop to recruitment? Also looking at staggered work days. Can you have some employees, come in on some days and then pay them for those days instead of stopping their work completely? Then look at unpaid time off. Look at other strategies such as, the government is now giving small businesses a lot of support. How can you then access that support, grants, loans at cheap interest rates? Then you look at things in terms of, use of less energy and all that. So these are the things that we basically need to start looking at. Getting employees back to work and supporting them should be looked at in this in the light of these strategies. And there are basically also other sources where employers need to be looking at what the government is saying in terms of regulation and guidance. How do they say we should conduct ourselves going back to work? We have to familiarize ourselves with that and then let our employees understand how this would affect them in one way or the other. And a lot has been said in this regards. Also, what are the scientists saying with respect to, being infected with coronavirus, right? And ensuring that all the necessary requirements are put in place. We also need to understand our external and internal realities. Now, also one of the things on the table that employers need to be quite aware of, both for employees and also for their facilities, is the issue of security. How do we then manage that issue, going forward? How do we ensure that our staff are safe, right, when they're going from work and back to their homes? So basically, these are the things that we need to look at and make sure that we're spot on when it comes to that. Obviously, all the other things that the other panelists have said are also things that employers need to put into consideration. And I'm just going to bunch them into three main buckets: information, health, and security. So information, most especially with respect to how the COVID-19 challenges has affected the business. Employees have to be aware about that. The reason is because we then need to shape our operations going forward in light of personnel costs, right? And in light of other costs as well. We need to shape our operations in a different way, or in a more optimal way, more enhanced way, to be able to tap into the new opportunities that are available. So these are the things that we then need to take cognizance of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dayo. I'm sure we've all gotten some ideas from those excellent ones that you've shared. And now we're going to take some questions from the audience. We have selected some from the chats, and as I said, we'll answer others by email afterwards. So we have a question from Chidinma Maduka, and she's directing her question to Adun. So the question is, how do you manage staff that are not tech savvy and may not be able to contribute fully at this period?
Thank you, Chidinma, and that's a very good question. And I think particularly a lot of businesses that are retail, for example, that have not been technology dependent or reliant, are having to see that they need to either retrain their staff or upskill them. So it also depends, Chidinma, on what you need the staff to do. So if it is something that requires digital, the use of digital technology, then can you provide training for them? Can you send them links? I know that many people can use their Instagram and their WhatsApp, for example. So can we also kind of layer what you need them to do? And so try and come up with the most simple, the simple task that you need them to fulfill and complete. What you need to also do is say that, can you share with them your expectations and say, okay, you know what, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And I know that you do not know how to do this. These are the things that I think you should observe. These are the training you should go. YouTube provides you so many tools. Like I said, most people know how to use WhatsApp. So can you use WhatsApp, for example? And also, can you, if they are not able to, just because they can't, it's very difficult to also, at this time, really just change your reorientation, see whatever you can ask them to do. So if your business requires WhatsApp, perhaps they can manage the WhatsApp, perhaps they can manage Instagram responses, or they can manage, they might not be able to manage email, but they can manage those other ways of communicating with your customers. But I really don't know what your business line is, so it's very difficult to share that. What we are doing, for example, with my team members is for those that do not need to use technology as part of their work, I have tried to see how can we use them to do other things. So for example, spend this time training them, so let them self-learn, but also spend time, either going to the office, so they live quite close to the office, going to the office to water the garden, for example. So this is for my security personnel who cannot do anything at this time. And he goes twice a week, but he's still being paid fully because, again, this is not the time to really put people into poverty further. So these are conversations that you can also have with your team members and see what they want to do, what they can do, and what they are really safely and able to do.
Thank you, Adam, for that response. And the next question is for Gbadun. Gbadun, there's a question here from Ayo Thomas. Ayo would like to know how we can hold employers who do not want to provide the basic safety needs for their employees. How can we hold them responsible without harming the company?
Please, can you repeat that? I didn't get that, sorry.
Okay, Ayo is asking,
Yes.
making the case that there are some employers who do not
Okay.
want to provide basic safety needs for their employees. So
Yes.
how do employees hold them responsible without harming the company? What do we do?
Well, as employees, I mean, their safety is very paramount. So if employers are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they will have to, I mean, because their safety comes first. Without affecting, they may go as far as, I mean, buying this protective equipment, because if we look at what we're talking about nowadays is the nose mask and, you know, just the sanitizers. You could just provide some for yourself and make a case to the employers that I've had to do this for myself for some time and my safety is at risk. I'll be stressing that you make this provision for me. You know, I mean, for an employee who's done that, I think it shows that they still want to keep their job. You know, and for an employer who is not reasonable enough to provide this PPE, would look at that and I'm sure would want to do what they're supposed to do. But really and truly, if we look at this, because for example, I mean, there are different roles. There's the frontline staff. They are very crucial. I mean, there's a PPE that you must provide. Then there's a back office working from home. If you're working from home, I mean, you can actually do that for yourself because you may not need to be coming to work regularly. But for the frontline staff, it is a must. They can go ahead, do it for themselves for some time, but maybe for a week, and make a strong case to the employers. That wouldn't affect business. That would be my submission.
Thank you, Gbadun. Someone was asking whether we'll have the recording. We'll send it to your emails. And someone else has asked whether this conversation is only about employees. The first segment is only about employees. We'll talk about other stakeholders in the next segment, which will come up in a few minutes. Now we have a question from Matthew, and I think maybe Austin, you can handle this for us. I'm going to read it out because it's a bit long. He says, there has been a lot of talk about companies being loyal to their employees, but in reality, there are a number of employees that are not concerned about the survival of the business. They may already be considering other options. How do you manage such employees at this kind of time when it's clear that their contribution to the success of business is little?
Well, businesses are not supposed to firefight in this kind of environment. Like I've always said, the first thing is, whether in peace or wartime, you build trust with your employees. And then if an employee is not skillful, there's nothing you can do about that, because a business is not a missionary society and it's not a charitable organization. So if you know, there are two things you could do. Either build capacity before this kind of problem, or try and find ways to make sure that they are attuned to what they are good at. But whereby this is not possible, then you probably have to, I think Adu alluded to it, if you talk support and nothing is happening, then the person will have to go, because you need to make certain decisions. And let me put it this way, it's only a profitable business that can be a sustainable one. So if you're not making profit, you can be sustained, you can keep your staff, you can render service, you can't do anything. So the point is, if you notice a staff that is not working in the interest of the business, the first thing you do is find out why. Provide all kinds of support, like Gbadu said. And where that fails, the person will have to go. That's my comment to that.
Thank you so much, Austin. Now we have a question. Can we mute the mics, please? We have a question from Thomas Mondier. And I think this question could go to Dayo, because I think your experience will help us in answering. Thomas would like to know, what are the challenges faced by businesses that are dependent on imports from outside the continent, or those who are engaged in businesses across the continent? How are they managing?
Well, we're not managing at all. And I'm not talking just solely from my company's point of view, but from the sector point of view, because, you know, as you must have read somewhere in a lot of articles that come up and have spoken about it, news wires as well, is that a lot of the imports, raw material imports, are actually from China. So China has a huge chunk of raw materials, and with China then down and locked down, that had affected, the supply chain. So supply chains were really affected. But what we've seen is we've seen the government really rise up to the occasion on this time to basically provide support wherever they can. And that is to give concessions for essential goods and services, So where you're manufacturing essential goods, and this is along the supply chain, then you're then giving that concession to be able to, the usual issues that would have at the port, where we have challenges and when we'll not be able to clear our goods properly, then we've had that support. The other thing is that I've seen manufacturers also step up to being very, very nimble in terms of planning, proactively planning, their supply chain. So their procurements, issues in terms of their inventories and all that have been things that have been really sorted out. So they had looked short term and seen the areas where they're going to be impacted in terms of materials, and had really gone ahead to be able to manage those risks on time. Those who haven't done so well in that regards would of course be affected.
Thank you, Dayo. We have a question about whether some organizations are taking advantage of COVID-19 to inappropriately disengage staff. For example, with the current cashless policy, one would have expected that they would have downsized already, but instead, now because there's COVID-19, they're using this as an excuse to lay off staff. So this question comes from Ewono. And Austin, would you care to address that?
Yeah, I was surprised because with the deployment of technology, we expected some downsizing, especially in the financial sector. But if you read reports from the CBN, and other agencies, quite a couple of financial institutions were already struggling before COVID-19. And then CBN was trying to come up with stimulus packages for them. There's no cut and paste rule to this. A business is a business, and what they have to do, they have to do. But they have to do it in an ethical manner. They have to do it in a very responsible manner, and then they have to also be humane, whatever they do. Yes, businesses might take advantage of COVID-19 situation to do things that are not ethical, but long term, they're going to pay the price, because those people that are affected, we know that they took advantage of COVID-19 pandemic. It's not advisable to do that. And like we started in the panel, you need to talk to your staff, you need to counsel, and you need to get their buy-in for every decision you make. And this is the time to use figures, facts and figures and data to talk to your people. If the bank is not doing well and they want to downsize, show the books to your staff. They are the one doing the work. Share it with them and elicit from them some of the actions you may take to survive. Some of them might come up with ideas that will even shock you, to show you that they also have the interest of the business at heart. So I think it's unethical to take advantage of a situation like this, but any business that does that should be ready to pay the price in the long term.
Thank you so much, Austin. Mic's off, please. So thank you for that. I think that also answers the questions that a number of people have asked from the audience about how to cope when you're a small business and you've actually been putting extra effort to even keep the employees on before this period. And right now you don't know what to do because you've already been spending your own personal money to keep them on. So I think Austin's advice would also apply to that you need to discuss with them and discuss the future of the business, because if the business doesn't continue existing, it's going to be impossible to keep them on anyway. But at the same time, without being unethical or irresponsible towards them, because they're all together and the goals are actually aligned with yours. So this is the point at which we're going to switch over to the next segment where we will talk about some other stakeholders. But I'm going to first ask each panelist on the first segment to say one last sentence about how to handle the impact of COVID-19 on the workforce. Just give us your final thoughts on how to do this in an ethical and responsible way. So I'm going to ask first Badun to tell us something.
In life, actually, thank you, Kemi, but in life, we know we get what we give. I mean, what you give is actually what you get. So a genuine interest in your workforce will generally generate for you a good level of commitment and productivity. But you must know that this giving, in most cases, is sacrificial. And that would be what I'll have to leave with you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Austin?
Yeah, like we say in Christianity, this too will pass. This is the time to be innovative, and this is the time to also see some of the things happening as opportunities for the businesses to build on. I think somebody talked about innovating on our business models. So people who can think through this situation now will be able to take advantage of the post-COVID era, and they will make a lot of money out of it.
Thank you so much. Adun.
Thank you. I think my final words are going to be that, as Austin said, this is going to pass. So let's have a long-term view. This situation is stressful right now, but it's going to pass at some point. And we have a responsibility for what we do, but also we're also responsible for what we do not do. So we must be very conscious of this human element to sustainability.
Thank you so much. And now, Dayo, please give us your final thoughts.
I think my co-panelists, if I may use that phrase, have really done well in wrapping up. I noticed that there was a question that was posed to me, basically touching on the issue of staggered costs, wages and promotions and all that, and saying how do we then get the sign-off of employees. It's really about conversation. So it's really about, what employers can afford and how they keep the business going on, in a sustainable manner. If those conversations are not held, then obviously there will be friction and there will be a lack of understanding. So the right kind of stakeholder management approach has to be taken, engaging the employees and letting them understand if the business has been given the right kind of information from time on the business and where the business is, it won't be very hard to have those conversations. People will be able to trade off. It's either you trade off or you go and sit down and don't have a job. And I think it's better for you to trade off and still have a job. And when the business is back on its, tracks, then you can then go back to status quo. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Dayo. Thank you to all the first set of panelists. Thank you to the audience. I apologize for any questions that we've left unanswered. As I said, we will continue to answer them. So I'm handing over now to Adun. She's going to moderate the second segment of today's webinar, where we'll turn the spotlight on responsibilities for two other stakeholders, the customers and our society. So over to you, Adun.
Thank you so much, Kemi, and thank you to our participants and our panelists. Just very quickly, we have discussed the workforce already, and now we're trying to look at our customers and our other stakeholders, particularly the communities and societies in which our businesses operate, especially given the disruptions to businesses right now. Sustainability activities, CSR activities have also been disrupted. So this segment should hopefully provide some insights as to how to effectively manage these other stakeholders. And what I will start with, or who I will start with, is Chidinma. So Chidinma, given the uncertainty and ensuing tensions concerning COVID-19 and the after effects of the lockdown, in your experience, what are some of the responsibilities that businesses can give, and what are the responsibility to their customers, and what issues are they facing right now, and what should they be doing?
Thank you, Adun, for that question. The effect of COVID-19 has really adversely affected the economy. I mean, if you look at the statistics that we have available to us, different analysts have postulated different things about the effect of the economy. Some say it will contract up to 1%, some say as much as 3.5 or 5%. I mean, and these effects are going to have dire consequences for most of us. Now, different sectors will be affected differently, and organizations are going to have to face with these real issues when they're trying to manage their customers. Now, we know that our customers are the lifeblood of every organization, And we know that it's very important that your customers keep servicing whatever obligations they have to you. I mean, selling your business goods and services is what essentially keeps you alive as a business. So when it comes to engaging your customers, it's very important that not only do you understand your own value chain, you understand your customers' value chain. You have to know how your customers are also making money at this time. And then trying to see how you can put things in place to keep them alive and keep your business alive so they can meet their obligations. So businesses are going to look very creatively at how they manage their customers. And one thing we can do is extension of credit terms. If you have a payment cycle, for instance, of 15 days, you may want to review that in line with what your customers can realistically meet. You know, we don't want to put things that are going to put undue pressure on your customers that are unable to meet their obligations. We need them to meet their obligations so that we can stay in business. So you might want to look at that, extending credit terms. Then you can also give discounts as well if they're able to meet their obligations, probably in a timely fashion. If, for instance, your payment terms are 15 days and they can meet it in 10 days, you may be able to offer some sort of concession, 3% discount or a 5% discount. What that does for you, of course, is that it ensures your liquidity position is intact. At this time, liquidity is king. If you know where your cash is, then you know that you're probably going to pass out of this pandemic in a healthier fashion. We want businesses to thrive and survive, you know. And then, of course, ethically, which is what the basis of all this thing has been, you really have to ensure that you're providing the right goods and services without undercutting your customers. Now, if you know any useful information that you can pass over to your customers that can also help them to survive, it's important that you do that. Like, for instance, the BOI, that's the Bank of Industry, they were refinancing loans that their vendors had in line with FGM regulation. And they actually reached out to those who had debt obligations to them to give them this revised payment structure. Now, if you are in a business where you know that some of your customers can benefit from these incentives and palliatives, either by the government or any other sort of sectors, it's important that you communicate this to your customers as well. Engagement is extremely important. I cannot be overemphasized at this time. You must engage. Let your customers know that you feel their pain, that you feel the issues that they have, because you know that this is a symbiotic relationship. If your customers survive, you have a better position of surviving. What COVID-19 has done for us and situated very effectively is that we are all interrelated. Each business, each customer, the society, the environment, the world, we are all interconnected. So for customers, we must ensure that we're meeting all of our obligations to them by providing good goods and services, communicating with them effectively, engaging, feeling their pulse, understanding how else you can provide value to them. And then ultimately, business will have to review and revalidate their value proposition. What else can you do to your customers? What else can you do to provide service to them? Because ultimately, we know that our customers are the lifeblood of every business, and their survival is our survival. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chidinma. And I think you've really set the scene on the various elements that we need to consider about our customers in terms of they are also going through this. So we need to think about their value chain. We need to understand what their challenges are. To the extent that we can we offer discounts? Can we offer delayed payment terms? And can we also see how we can help them in their businesses? So these are very, very good points. And now, Edwin, I'm going to come to you to ask you this question, which I think is something that is very relevant for us right now in Nigeria, because organizations are having to deal with fears and pressures and uncertainty. And some of these can lead to unethical behavior. Can you share some insights on this and the likely implications of such actions?
Thank you very much, Adun. The last panel has actually done a little bit of into what I'm supposed to be saying. Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. The spread of the coronavirus, as we all know, has created fears, and businesses of all shapes and sizes around the globe are feeling the shock. Even in Nigeria, around the streets, every nook and cranny. The problem is that it has presented humanity with unprecedented challenge, and no community has been spared from the massive economic chaos. We have all experienced fears and pressures in one form or the other, but the focus today is how does this concern businesses of all forms and shapes and their stakeholders. First and foremost, what exactly is this fear in question? Fear, as we all know, is a negative and potentially uncontrolled emotion linked to the perception that a situation is risky or dangerous. Psychologists that have taught us in schools views fear as a reaction to a stimulus. Fear is not just an irrational emotion. It is in most cases important, of course, because it can save our lives. Unfortunately, fear has its own negative aspects because it increases the risk of provoking unethical behaviors, which of course is what we are discussing right now. These type of fears are often created by various factors, which automatically leads to what the parlor says, ethical blindness. And this ethical blindness is such that it gives you, it puts you in a total confusion, and you begin to behave in the abnormal way. Again, let us look at it from the employee angles, and of course the SMEs that are dotted all over the globe. These people are serious fears and pressures right now. The total collapse of various activities, of course, you all know with the lockdown, the home becomes everything. You have the family, that becomes your workplace, your church, your market, all the parties you cannot go again. And all these things are huge form of pressure and fears. Look at the small business owners whose products are not within the essential services radar. They are worse hit because they can't open. Again, look at the other angle, the daily wage earners. If you look at the bottom of the pyramid, you discover they occupy the bottom, and they are very many. They earn their daily wages on daily basis. These people are beginning to beg because they can't even come out. They can't walk on the streets. Again, if you look at the other angle, you discover that at the end of it all these things are putting a lot of pressure on them, and morality flies out of the window. And when morality flies off the window, unethical activities becomes the order of the day for the sake of survival. What about the bigger organizations? What are they going to do? They are not better than the smaller ones these days. Because if you look at it closely, you discover that there will be shortage of demand. They have their products. Some have already mass produced, but they're not going to sell. There's no purchasing power. The performance indices they put in place, and of course, revenue targets, they will never meet it. So all these are going to be they're going to create fears on them. The unfavorable government policies, federal government says this, state government says that, police are on the road doing a different thing, and all these things are creating fears. Security, the staff that cannot or are not sure whether they're going to continue this job. Do you think they will not steal some of the company properties because they might not be coming back? So it is another angle. Alternative business, you discover that a lot of people are going into alternative businesses. The tailor, the mobile tailors on the streets now sews masks. You can imagine that. And bigger companies are equally on mass production. So all this put together, you discover that with the biting effect of COVID-19, many may lead to falsification of various financial statements, which will dent their images in no distance time. And as it was with a bigger global organization that did this before, such as Arthur Andersen, Lehman Brothers, and co., nothing you do that is unethical that will last. Companies that engage in this will pay the bigger price for their unethical behaviors in the long run. So it is important that organizational managers tactfully manage their activities to stay above water and act ethically. Adun, I will stop here for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Edwin, and thank you for also, explaining what fear is, explaining what, the example of some pressures that organizations have to face, and the importance of taking a step back to really look at the bigger picture and saying what exactly is really happening, what we want to do here, especially as you said, because of the long-term effects. So thank you for that. So Ijoma, I'm going to come to you. We've discussed customers really extensively, and now it's time to talk about, the social and environmental elements of sustainability and of what is going on with COVID-19. So can you share some of the social and environmental implications of COVID-19, and particularly, with the effect of the after effects of the lockdown in Nigeria, and what responsibility do organizations have to address some of these implications?
Thank you, Adun, and everybody. Good afternoon. Yes, so with the social and environmental impacts, I would say there's nothing new under the sun. And why I say this is that COVID-19 is appearing on a landscape where we were already dealing with some of these problems. And as my colleague said, it has come in to just complicate that. So for example, the elephant in the room is poverty. So as you know, more than half of our population is living in extreme poverty, which the World Bank defines as living on less than $2 a day. So that was a situation that was already on the ground before COVID-19 appeared. And poverty is not just a lack of money, of income. There are many dimensions, you know. For example, with COVID-19, we are facing our own collective poverty around the availability of health infrastructure. So beyond having where people can isolate for COVID-19, as you know, to treat day-to-day health challenges like malaria, and even to provide prenatal care, we were already struggling before this happened. So what has happened with the lockdowns is that those challenges have become more pronounced and more acute in many dimensions. So I would say, let's look at the dimension of poverty that has to do with food security. One of the questions that was sent through this afternoon has to do with farmers, you know. So there was a question from, I believe that was Susan, who was asking about all these farmers who are producing food, but there's nowhere to channel that food, right? So before COVID-19, we have a situation where 1 to 5 individuals walking on the street was undernourished, didn't have enough to eat. And then now what we've seen with COVID-19 is that that situation has become more complicated because our food value chain has broken down. So even though the government said, you know, food is an essential, and if you're working in that area, you are free to move about. But as we know, there are security issues. Some of the truckers who take the food from the farm to the market are not ready to go out for fear of harassment from security agencies and even from regular citizens who are just hungry and ready to rush that food however they can. So COVID-19 on the social side has complicated our problems around food security, and which is why people are saying our problem is not coronavirus, but hunger virus, right? So we're dealing with the two at a go. So that's for food. And I think businesses have a responsibility here. And that responsibility is not just around you know, providing food aid. In fact, one of the positive stories that has come of this situation is that we've really rallied round. So every business, large and small, has had to provide food to its employees or to the community around at different scales. So that has been one of the good stories. And what we'd say is that businesses should endeavor not to do it alone, because there is, if you go on the street, everybody is doing, for instance, food banks, which are really providing relief on the ground. So what we encourage is partnerships, because what we've seen through our work at the LBS Sustainability Center is that when businesses work together, they're really able to do more. And it's not just a question of providing money to relieve hunger among, you know, your employees or among in the community more broadly. There is also a place for providing logistical support, because as I said, while people are hungry in their homes due to the lockdown, farmers are not able to get the food out. So sometimes where we can intervene around food security, for instance, is on the technical side of providing logistics, right, to get this food where it needs to go. So we shouldn't always think of our CSR as something that involves spending money. Sometimes as a business is your technical expertise, and it's also something you can involve your employees around as a way of employee engagement, so that at least we can look through this difficult time and feel that we were part of the solution. And the other thing that I wanted to point out on the social side is that COVID-19 has really impacted jobs, especially among young people. We were already upwards of over 20% unemployment and underemployment prior to this. And it's gotten worse because especially those who make money day to day can't go back out to work. So this is an area where businesses can also look within. I know many businesses are struggling with the staff that they have, how do we keep them on? But we can also look at where a company is able to absorb more people. And that absorption is not just a case of employment, but many times, especially for youth, many times we find that they don't have they don't know where to look for work or even have employability skills. So companies can provide, even through simple internships, opportunities for youth to be employed. And in that way, we're able to start to recover, because the two core things we want to achieve is redistribution, to the extent that we're helping those who are really severely impacted by poverty get through this. And then we're also regenerating the environment, looking at how we can move from this situation to a better place, because it was not Uhuru before COVID-19. So what we want to strive towards is a situation that is even better than what we had before. And the environmental impacts of COVID-19 are pointing us there. As you know, we have with the pollution situation around air pollution with everybody at home has improved, but we don't know if this is temporary simply because people are at home. But it's a good story that I'd like us to build on, so that businesses can do more for society as well as for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ijoma, and thank you for really taking us even outside of the urban areas, because it's very easy for us to think that this is really just affecting urban areas, but to look at the rural areas, the rural poor, different elements of supply chains, and how we can, as organizations, really try to also consider them and make sure that we are including these people in our business contingency plans. I think the other important thing that you shared was that it's important for us to really be collaborative right now, so that the impact of the interventions that we're trying to do in our societies can really be felt. So in terms of food banks, etc., how are we pooling together for resources so that the impact can be felt? And this is something we've always said, even for sustainability efforts and interventions in communities, that organizations should really look at not doing things in isolation, but see how you can partner with other organizations to drive impact. So thank you so much to my panelists. And now to you, our participants, I would like you to share with us, you've been listening to a lot of the ideas that we've come up with and some of our insights. Can you share with us some of your practical and innovative suggestions on how companies can survive and remain profitable while still treating their customers, their employees, the society, and other stakeholders ethically and responsibly? So please share this in the Q&A section of your Zoom panel. And whilst you're doing that, I have questions that we have been asked. Again, like Kemi said, we can't answer all, but we're going to try and answer a few of them, and we will get back to you later. So I have some questions that have already been asked, which I'm going to share with the panelists now, and we're going to try to answer. So Chidinma, I have a question for you from Edwin War, which is looking really at a business that is trying to address value chain issues. So if your company is a business administrator, like being midstream or partner of value chain, and the upstream, i.e. the business owner, has instructed that you cut down budget by 30%, yet you still have to be efficient and competitive, how do you deal with this situation when you have to explore options that might not even be available to you and it is not realistic? So what would you do in this situation? So it's almost like, you have a customer that you have to deal with.
This is a very real and practical question that I'm sure many businesses are going through at this time and considering their options. Now, cutting budgets. There's no business at this point who has not gone back to review their business model or their budgets, because what you had planned in the beginning of January of this year is certainly not what you're looking at in the face of this pandemic and the effects. So if it's just regarding one specific customer, then of course you have to manage that in itself. But looking at your entire value chain, you have to review where can you trim the fats. You need to just have lean structures that can produce as much of the same results as is possible. You cannot continue business as usual, as much as we would love that to be the case. The pressures on any business now will demand that you have to produce the same results with less resources. Now, how each company is going to do that will depend on its creativity, its liquidity, its independence, really, because if you're tied into an OEM agreement or with an upstream player, then of course you have to align your decisions based on what they require. But even if you didn't have that, you need to look inwards into your business model. Is this efficient? What are the needs to haves and what are the nice to haves? And you have to make tough decisions. There's really no way around it. Hard decisions need to be taken. And for a business, if it's for your survival, you just need to do what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chidinma, and thank you for really answering that question very, very succinctly. The next question that I have is for Edwin, and this is a question on how do we make sense of the very fluid and very ambiguous definition of essential duties. And I would like you to answer this question given what your earlier comments on the fears and pressures. So perhaps I feel like the person who asked the question is saying some organizations are expanding their interpretation of essential duties. Please unmute.
Yes, thank you. I don't know who asked the question, and that would have helped me to really address it directly to him or her. Well, it is the government that actually determines what is essential and what is not. But if you look at it critically, from their own point of view, I believe that it has to do with those things that the people cannot do without. For instance, you need food. You need petrol to go around. You need electricity, at least to even stay at home. Those things are very, very essential. Those things that if you even look at the pyramid, at the bottom of it, all these things belong there. But if you are talking of a carpenter, a mechanic, a building material sellers, this is not the time, according to them, because of the ravaging effect of COVID-19, to start building houses, because that social distancing will not be there. But right now, what they are looking at is a situation where people can at least have some form of basics to help them stay at home. In the Western world, for instance, where they, of course, you have a lot of social welfare, the government asked them to stay at home, but they were able to provide them with the same thing. We cannot provide such things here. So the only thing they can do is to allow some of those things to continue to go around, while those ones that are not necessarily essential. If you look at what Austin said in the previous panel, we discovered that some people are building a house. Well, the company is able to warehouse them, but what about the guys supplying road? Road is not an essential commodity or essential, does not belong to the essential ones, but they are going to get stuck because they cannot get this road. But if it is to get food, get fuel, get sea lights to sit down at home and all those things, basically, I think that is what forms essential. But to me, I believe without light, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And of course, we have to have our water, we have to have our food to keep alive. Basically, those are the things that I believe are the essential aspects of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. And this is just for clarification. What Edwin has said is that the government has defined what essential duties are. If you're providing that, then you're covered. And if you're not providing that, then you will know whether or not what you're doing is part of essential duties and services. And it's time for us to be responsible at this time and try as best as possible to not put ourselves or our staff at unnecessary risk. And now I have a question for Ijeoma, please. And Ijeoma, the question to you is from Akinkunle Akiode, who said that what should be our response and what should the government's response be to the vulnerable, and I don't want to use this word, but also to the miscreants around us?
Thank you for that question. And I would say that we should think of our response in two ways. There's going to be, and there already is, in many cases, a short-term response, and one that is more long-term and drawn out. So on the short term, many of those who are vulnerable, even those who are miscreants, are already in our communities at our doorsteps. So on that angle, what is required is a short-term humanitarian response, which many businesses and communities are already doing, providing food, providing water, and other basic needs that people have right now, each day. So while that is going on a more long term, I think this has been the greatest lesson from this situation we're passing through. We need to think really long term and collaboratively about how we're going to address the problem of poverty that has been here with us before COVID-19. So, and this needs a more structured approach. You talk about vulnerable people and miscreants. There's a need to really have a proper assessment of their needs, to understand what their experiences are, as a basis for designing interventions that can truly bring them out of poverty. Because as we all know, humanitarian response is not sustainable. We can't continue we can't get people out of poverty by feeding them day to day. We have to do that right now, but we must help people actually get to a point where they're able to also help themselves. So this involves collaboration with other businesses and collaboration with also government, right? And collaboration with NGOs. There are NGOs on the ground who have been at the front lines of some of these issues that have made people that have to do with vulnerable people and even what you call miscreants, right? So we need to think of it as a collective project in that sense. So understanding their situations and experiences and designing interventions that really do make sense to them and that are sustainable. And I'll give an example from the food security situation I talked about. You know, there's a lot of poverty in our rural areas, and these are people who work hard on their farms. And what we're seeing is that the technology they need, the resources they need are available, but the problem is delivering those resources to them. When you think about seed, when you think about fertilizers, when you think about training, extension training, those resources are already within our institutions, within our businesses, even the technical know-how. So sometimes what we need to think about is how to connect the dots in terms of how to get resources to where they need to go. But definitely COVID-19 suggests to us that it is no longer business as usual. Those vulnerable people, those miscreants, we are all in the same boat together. So we have to figure out how to keep the boat afloat, essentially.
Thank you so much for that, Ijeoma. And I'm just going to share some of the comments and ideas that have been sent in terms of practical and innovative suggestions. So I have one from Chinedu Erelike, who says that this is the time for businesses to look toward energy management to save costs. So most of our organizations have no energy management policy and facilities are not energy efficient. So I think that's a very good point. And another one from Oluwafumilola Ibimidu, who said that, you know, now it's time to think of sustainability efforts in terms of providing pipe-borne water in all our localities. This is a major requirement aside upgrading our health facility system. And actually, we know that access to clean water is also very tied to access to, to good health. And then, so please keep sharing some of your comments. What we're going to do is, if I don't say it all, just because of time, again, we will document this and share this with all registered participants. So now, and I think we're keeping to very good time, I'll come back to you, my panelists, so Chidinma, Edwin, and Ijeoma, on your final thoughts on how companies can survive this crisis responsibly. So Chidinma, please share how they could treat their customers, Edwin, their shareholders and employees, and Ijeoma, their community and other stakeholders, while they're still trying to stay afloat.
So thank you. To just sum it up, we've discussed this, I believe, extensively, but just to reiterate, this is not the time where, proverbially, you don't want to kill the golden goose that lays your golden eggs. We need our customers to keep producing for us. We don't want to put any undue pressure on our customers that they're unable to meet their obligations to us, and then we lose them, and then we lose that source of revenue. So we're going to work with them. We're going to understand the pain areas they're going through. We're going to ensure that we're able to do things to keep them in business, so to speak, so that we can stay in business. We're also going to ensure that we treat them as equitably and as fairly as is possible. And we're all going to focus on the fact that sustainably, we want to all be in business long after this pandemic is over. Thank you.
Thank you. And Edwin?
Thank you once again, Adu. Another tells us that we will never face a problem that is not charged with opportunities. The virus is still out there, and businesses must find newer ways to manage and satisfy their employees and shareholders. In addition to wearing masks, it is important to be innovative, as shortcuts never work. Businesses need to redesign new business models that will stand the test of time. It is time to put your thinking caps and engage your employees and other shareholders on the way forward. Employees are blessed. I think we are not even understanding this. Employees are blessed with several talents. It is important to listen to them. Taking together can have a multiplier effect. Furthermore, shareholders need to put together a very lean board of real experts who knows exactly what they are doing and can add measurable value to the growth of the organization. All forms of bottlenecks must be done away with. And if you are bringing a new director on board, proper onboarding must be put in place so that he or she can hit the ground running. As the case is now, a lot of organizations will be transforming their offerings entirely. From surgical masks to personal protection equipment, you need to adapt products to suit the time. This is not the time to begin to dangle up and down. Make sure you think properly with your employees, with all the shareholders bringing in their thoughts. Definitely, we will survive this whole thing and stand against it. Thank you very much, Adun.
Thank you, Edwin. And Ijeoma.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your amazing engagement, pretty much, with your questions and all. So to round up, I would like to say for businesses to respond to their community in this time, they need to do 4 things. 1, serve them. 2, understand them. 3, join them. And then 4, grow with them. So first is an ethical leadership position we as businesses have to take, where we have to understand our engagement to community as service. And this is an idea that is old as the earth. 4th century BC, Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher, was talking about this. Fast forward, even in our biblical and religious texts, there is that view of leadership as service. So we have to understand within our own business context what this means. What does it mean to serve? And our communities. And if we serve them, we would take the time to understand them. So even as we are deciding what is it we're going to do for the community, what are the products and services we're going to create that are affordable to the poor masses within our own environment, we have to do it by engaging them. They are human beings with dignity, so we have to understand them. And there are business tools for this, innovation tools. There's a lot of talk out there about human-centered design. So we have to understand better who our community is and how best to serve them with our products and social initiatives. And then I'd also say join them, right? So there's a strong need for collaborative partnership. So where we're not working alone, because what's happened a lot in our CSR landscape is that people are doing things solo and not getting the kind of impact that is required for the kind of scale we need for a population as large as what we have. So we need to think really, really strongly about partnerships where we can put our egos and logos behind to actually do things together to solve the huge social problems that we have, the poverty we've had pre-COVID and which has only gotten worse. So we must join them and join others to make a difference. And then finally, when we do those things, I believe we'll be able to grow with them, because no business can thrive in a society that is failing. So that is where I'd like to leave it today. But I do believe that this crisis, something good will come of it.
Thank you so much, Ijeoma, for that. And so I've just received quite a number of suggestions. I'm going to still mention one from Thomas Mundia, who gave a very, three good suggestions, which is the importance of engaging employees to propose cost-cutting measures. I think this is very important because involving and including employees will also let them know that you appreciate their views and respect their views. And then trying to engage individually or collectively with the telecoms company for subsidized data for employees working from home. Again, we know that some telecoms companies have already reached out to help, and you never know, you can ask and see what they come back with, because they also need customers at this time. And then the third one is to try and negotiate financial facility repayment plans with financiers, and it says attach assets to transition financing from funders. So I really don't. So yes, I think what he was trying to say was just saying that if you do have to repay, they know what's going on, try and negotiate with them and see how you can come up with more favorable plans that reduce the pressure on your business at this time. So we still have a bit more time, so I'm going to take two more questions very quickly, and it's going to go to the earlier panelists. So Dayo, the question I have for you is this. It's from Omosui Edomwoyi, who asked, what is your advice for micro, small, and medium enterprises and startups in this new normal, particularly in the post-lockdown economy, with regards to the best strategy for survival and business sustainability? So basically, this is for MSMEs and startups.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very valid question and something that we all need to be really looking at in detail. So look, the new advice is, first of all, you have to do a self-assessment of your business. So look at the realities that surround your business right now. How are you going to cope going forward, and how have you been affected by the impact? What are the things that you basically need to change? I've had this session with some SMEs, and I basically said you need to be nimble. The first thing is, if COVID-19 has affected your business, and if you understand that your business, you won't be able to cope going forward, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what do you need to change, quickly to be able to adapt? And I'll give you a typical example. So there was a fashion designer that we heard of that obviously, a lot of people won't be into clothes making and all that right now. And so they were affected during the COVID-19. And one of the things that this fashion designer did was to quickly then look at what are the needs at this time, and how can, with the existing resources that she has, what can she then do? So she began to make face masks, and then did a little bit of a small documentary and put it out there. And I hear that she had a lot of, support from state governments and, who bought from her, businesses who then bought into her. So you have to be very innovative. You have to understand the context in which you are operating. You have to research. Your research has to be your friend right now. You know, you have to understand what is happening. You have to be realistic. If you have to cut off staff, you have to cut off staff. We've given you the, you know, different steps to look at it. If you cutting off staff should be the last thing. You have to embrace technology. So virtual is king right now. So these are some of the tips that you need to embrace.
Thank you so much, Dayo, for that. And also just to share, even from the tourism industry, like I said, which has been very severely affected at this time, what we're telling MSMEs in the tourism industry is to say, how can you, like Dayo said, how can you think of new ways to market domestic tourism? Domestic tourism is going to rise because people are going to be reluctant to travel post-lockdown, 1. 2, how can you also think of providing future services? So for example, if you're an event organizer or you have an event center and you know that perhaps by the later part of this year, you might have opened up a bit for maybe 20 to 50 people, can you sell some of that, you know, future asset now so that at a discount, so that at least you have some revenue? So again, like Dayo said, either look at pivoting into new lines or seeing how you can be a bit more innovative in terms of selling your, you know, your future service right now for people that can have cash and that can pay and do want these experiences but can get it at a discount. So Austin, I have a question for you. We have a few more minutes left. Very quickly, the question is to ask, how do you manage your remote work site to ensure business and operational continuity in the event that there is a COVID-19 implicated personnel within the workforce? This is a real challenge. I know that it's happening particularly in other parts of the world where, you know, your workforce then has COVID-19. What do you do when you're working, you know, remotely?
Well, one of the things that has happened is the NCDC has protocols for managing such situations. So the first thing, if you notice that any of your workforce is implicated, that person should be isolated. And then the rest of the staff must be tested, if possible, quarantine. Now, it's going to affect your work, but health first, because if you continue working with them and assume nothing has happened, you probably will lose everybody. So the first step is isolate, and then the person begins to get treatment. The remaining people that have had very close contact with, you know, the staff will also be quarantined and tested. And then, more importantly, you must report to NCDC because they have responsibility for managing this pandemic. It's not a routine, regular illness because it spreads very fast, it kills very fast. So while you're doing your own thing inside, you must bring on board as soon as possible NCDC for them to do what they have to do. And then finally, by the special grace of God, if the staff recovers, you must do some counseling to avoid issues of stigmatization, as the case may be. You remember at the peak of the HIV/AIDS epidemic as well, companies were persuaded to develop a workplace policy for HIV and to avoid, you know, so we can replicate, but with innovation and looking at current realities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Austin, for that answer. I think that was a very, very, you know, good answer, particularly in terms of can we start coming up with workplace policies for return to work for those that have, you know, had COVID-19 and are now fine to work back again. So this brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much for staying with us for so long. This session has really spoken about beyond products, beyond operations, beyond reputational influence. Let's look at the human element of sustainability and the responsibility that we have for action and inaction as well. We hope that you have gained some valuable insights that you can apply to your businesses, to your organizations. I apologize for any unanswered questions. And as Kemi said, all questions are going to be answered and shared with registered participants. So thank you. Kemi, over to you.
Thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar. It's been really interesting. And I think you will all agree with me that these conversations are necessary conversations. There are things that need to be spoken about. So please keep the conversations ongoing in your various forums, all the different forums that you belong to, raise the issues, guide and advise. You can email any of us at any time to get any insights or ideas or help to address those forums that you belong to. The next webinar in our series from LBS will come up on Thursday, and the panelists will speak to entrepreneurs, providing insights on strategy, innovation, and business continuity. For now, we will say bye-bye from this panel. Thank you to all the panelists again. Thank you to all of you for coming. Have a good lunch and keep safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.